Hello, hi, and welcome to all the viewers. My name's Georgie. I'm Head of Client Development here at Lexxic. Today, this is Neurodiversity Insights, and we're with Adam Corre. Adam, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I'm Adam, and I'm dyspraxic. I've worked across a number of different industries, most recently in marketing. I'm about to start a new role in the civil service, but I also speak extensively about dyspraxia in the workplace. Spoken at the civil service. I've also spoken in the advertising industry and across a number of different organisations, including sort of London universities as well, speaking to students. So it's something that I'm really passionate about, and it's something that I speak a lot about publicly.
Cool. And can you tell us a little bit more about when you were diagnosed, how long ago, and the journey of getting diagnosed itself?
Yeah, sure. So I was diagnosed about 6 years ago, and it really came about after I had worked in a number of different roles, and I kind of struggled after university. I struggled to keep in jobs, and I felt that something wasn't quite right. And it was only when I initially trained as a journalist at the Press Association that one of the tutors sort of recognised that I struggled to learn something called shorthand. So I couldn't copy letters in the right order. I can copy them in the right size and that sort of thing. And initially, she thought that I was dyslexic. And I wasn't quite sure that was quite right, but once I started looking into it, I realised it was dyspraxia, and there's a bit of a kind of aha sort of light bulb moment when that happened, and that was how I got diagnosed. Yeah,
that's cool. And when you did get diagnosed, did it change the way you saw yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think before that, I was quite hard on myself. I would kind of get sort of angry at myself for making mistakes and for not thinking in the way that other people seem to think, and not being able to do tasks and do work in the way that other people seem to do quite easily. And I felt that was something that kind of bugged me, I guess, at the time. But I felt that once I had that diagnosis, I was really kind of much kinder to myself, and I realized, and obviously there are challenges, but there are also enormous strengths, and in the right environment with the right support, and when someone is really playing to their strengths, I think that that's when you really get the best out of people, and that's when I kind of started to focus in on what kind of roles, careers were right for me and where I could really do well in. So there's a real kind of change there.
That's awesome. And you mentioned your strengths. So what would you say? I think dyslexia is very well known, and so is autism spectrum conditions, and dyspraxia is not as well known, essentially. So what would you say your strengths and challenges are? How did you identify that you were dyspraxic?
Yeah, so I would say that my big strengths are around kind of verbal communication skills, written communication skills, background in marketing. So I worked as a copywriter, which really plays to my strengths, I guess. I think also just sort of high levels of empathy, which seems to be very common amongst people who are dyspraxic. So I think that being able to put yourself in other people's shoes is a really good quality to have in a work setting and in life in general, I think. But certainly I think that those are my majors, but also sort of creativity and innovation. I feel like, with a lot of across the neurodiversity kind of a spectrum, I guess that the emphasis on being able to think outside the box and that kind of thing can also be hugely beneficial to an organization. So yeah, those are my strengths, I'd say.
That's awesome. And have you matched your strengths up with your new job?
Yes, I mean, I can't officially talk about it, to be honest, yet, because a lot of checks have to be done, but yes, I've been really conscious about matching as much as possible my strengths to my roles now, and I think that it's kind of like a path that kind of guides you. I think when you understand yourself, when you understand who you are, and when you have something like dyspraxia or dyslexia, whatever, you can often it gives you a kind of a path to follow, and to really focus in on an environment and on a job, a career that's really suited to you.
Which is awesome, really, because that's where people really struggle. I think people who do have a neurodiverse condition can sometimes try and put themselves in a job where they're not quite suited, and you can really become unstuck. When you did get diagnosed,
Yeah.
Did you ever question, well, actually prior to it, did you ever question your intelligence?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that that's something that's really common for people who don't necessarily understand what quite is going on in terms of the way that their brain works. I guess I think that if you're in the wrong environment, if you're in a team or you have a manager that doesn't quite understand that, I think that all those kind of things can really accumulate and can negatively affect the quality of your work life and your life in general. So I think that those thoughts definitely did go through my mind, and it's just about kind of having that resilience and kind of once you understand, you start to reframe things, I think, in your mind once you have a diagnosis, or once you have a clearer understanding of who you are, and then you can really kind of change direction, make a pivot, and develop a career and in a way that's suited to you and your strengths.
Which is awesome. And obviously you've only recently kind of gone through that recruitment process, but prior to that, we'll go through that in a minute, but in relation to jobs previously, have you had any negative experiences with management or managers because you are neurodiverse?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it's I think a lot of people have in a work environment at some point. And I think, as I say before, it's about having, once you understand a bit more about how you work, who you are, and have that diagnosis, I think that can help. And I think that obviously having reasonable adjustments and in particular coaching, I think can make a huge difference in terms of kind of bridging the gap between your challenges and that you might face. I think that negative experiences do make you stronger in the long run, and once you kind of push through it, I think that you kind of understand yourself a bit better, and you're able to find something that is right for you.
I think that's, and you just kind of touch base on the adjustments you had. I think some employers think, oh God, if I employ someone that's neurodiverse, it's going to cost me so much money. But actually, it is only small tweaks that people need. I'm kind of interested to know, was it coaching that suited you better? What is it, assistive technology? Was it just knowing you were neurodiverse and you could disclose? What's the really helpful thing that came from your diagnosis?
Yeah, I say that. I think that. Yeah, I think coaching in particular can have a huge impact, because it helps you not just in general a kind of understanding of who you are, but also the challenges and kind of bridging that gap when it comes to some of the challenges that you might be facing, whether it's organization, time management, memory, specifically within the context of that role. So there may be things that might work okay at home, or maybe in certain roles and certain environments, but being able to have that coach who kind of sticks with you for wherever you're working, and it can help you specifically within the role that you have and the demands of that job, can make a huge difference. And that's something that definitely helped me. I think I think that's been the biggest help.
And one thing, I've been having a couple of conversations recently, and there is a thought that actually ongoing coaching is actually, or could be, more beneficial than a short, sharp few sessions. What's your thoughts on that? I'm just interested to get your view on that.
Yeah, so I guess, I think personally that something needs to be ongoing. I think that it'll vary from person to person, but for me, I think that having that ongoing support, those that can kind of break down tasks for me that may be new or different, where there's different context that that didn't exist before in a particular role. Things can change quite quickly, like we've seen in the last few months, and so your environment can change, that sort of thing. I think that those, having that kind of constant kind of support, that kind of team in place, I guess, that's got your back, can make a big difference. I think that doing it long term is really good.
That's interesting, actually. And I guess it's about building that business case to your employer of, you know, what benefits that is, which I think can be done. But no, it's interesting you say that, because I feel the same. I have coaching myself for being neurodiverse, and I have ongoing coaching. It really does benefit me. Especially, I think that, I'm not sure if you're going coaching, it's very easy to stop doing things or forget things. So sometimes it's nice to have those prompts and reminders.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is true. But in relation, because obviously you've gone through the interview process recently, being a dyslexic individual, one, did you disclose? And two, how did you manage your dyspraxia within the interview process?
Yeah, so I did disclose on the actual job application form. So there's an option to kind of tick whether you're neurodiverse, and so I did that. I think that also the organisation itself is very inclusive, which I think makes a big difference. You know, speaking before about trying to apply for roles, be in a career that and in a company that is inclusive, and you're already on the kind of the right path. I think if you find that kind of environment, because then I think you feel more confident in talking about it. And so I did that, and in the interview itself, so I asked for the questions in advance, which made a huge difference actually, and just being able to see them written down made a massive difference, because then I was able to kind of tailor the examples that I had, using the whole STAR technique and that sort of thing for examples in the interview to those questions, and I just had them very clearly in my mind rather than on the spot. So even something very, very small like that can make a huge difference.
And was that the only adjustment you had in the interview?
Yes, that was. I think they gave me slightly longer to answer questions as well, so I could kind of process them, but that was all.
So you mentioned your new employer, who you said met before was a civil service, is known to be a neurodiversity friendly organisation. How did you know that? How do you know that at all?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think it's just from speaking to people. So I've done some speaking when it comes to sharing my dyspraxia and that sort of thing, and talking about neurodiversity in general. And I did meet quite a few people who worked in the civil service, and it was definitely an environment that seemed to be a lot of people who were very open about they were neurodiverse, and I think that made a huge difference in terms of my understanding of where might be a good fit for me. I think that also you often kind of like listen to what are the people at the top saying about this issue. Are they talking about it at all? And there are organisations where you can see that there are leaders out there who want to attract people who are neurodiverse. And I think that again that kind of gives you an insight into the culture there. But that kind of combination of speaking to people, seeing what asking them what's it really like there, how what kind of systems they got in place, what's the management like, having that insight on the ground is really important. And then of course, as I say, listening out to what people at the top are saying.
Which is awesome. And have you had it before where you've gone for a job and they haven't been open about being neurodiversity friendly, or they haven't been neurodiversity friendly? What's the difference in experience?
Well, I was very reluctant to talk about it. So I don't think I did talk about it. And that, I remember one occasion applying for a role, and part of the interview process was doing like a written kind of test. And I didn't feel comfortable telling them that maybe I needed to do it in a quieter environment. And so I was doing it out in the main office kind of thing. I was doing it in like the interview room, but you could hear the office, and it was really, really noisy. And that definitely had an impact on the quality of written work that I produced. And I didn't get the role, but and I think that's probably the main reason why I didn't. So I just didn't feel comfortable talking about it at all, and I kind of avoided the issue, I guess.
And isn't it? I've never disclosed prior to working at Lexxic, and the feeling of just being able to be yourself for me was incredible. So I'm assuming, it's just complete weight off your shoulders. I'm assuming it was the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
it's a pride. I think it's, being proud of who you are, and I think just so much comes with that. And as you've got the role in place already, are there adjustments sorted already for you? Are they organising that prior to your start, so when you do go in, you're all set and ready to go?
Well, I will be getting through access to work reasonable adjustments, and the specifics of that need to be organised. But yes, the fact that it's there, and I know that it's there, is a huge relief. And if I compare that to I was doing teacher training, and it was a real struggle trying to get those kind of adjustments in because it's through university actually, and they just the employability team there, the disability team there, sorry, they were just sort of overwhelmed. There just wasn't enough people to help the students, I think, at that university. And I think that was an environment again where it just wasn't quite right because the support wasn't in place.
So you've moved away from teacher training and taken your life in a completely different direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because they didn't have the support ready for you.
Yeah, and I think that thinking back on it as well, I think the environment itself isn't quite right. You think about schools; it's very difficult to find somewhere where you can plan lessons in a quiet environment, and certainly that sense of being around noise a lot was not easy to deal with.
So you're saying noise is a big distractor for you? Then that's one of your biggest. It's pretty challenging.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So in the past, what coping strategies have you developed to help you, survive working in a workplace where you haven't been openly dyspraxic?
I think that one of the things that I did was just having big earphones where possible, being able to use those. I think that I've been quite fortunate that the last few environments that I've been in general have been very inclusive places anyway. But before that, there was nothing. I didn't really have any coping strategies at all, and so obviously that's going to mean that it's going to be an uphill battle. You're already on the back foot, I guess, in a new role when actually you want to be making really good impression, and the first 90 days, as they always say, is particularly important, and obviously it's a real challenge to do that when you're immediately at a disadvantage, I feel.
No, 100%. And for anyone else out there who is dyspraxic, who is potentially looking to disclose or would like a bit of advice how to disclose, have you any practical tips for those people?
Yeah, so I actually a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago, wrote a post on it on LinkedIn. It seemed to get quite a lot of traction about how I've done it in the past, and what I've sort of learned through doing it in 3 different ways. So the first example I gave was I'm dyspraxic. Here's a list of 200 things that I might need so I can do well in this role. And obviously that's a bit overwhelming for a manager to deal with. And you're just sort of like, they're just gonna be like, what? Like, that's just so much to deal with. I don't think that's gonna, you're not narrowing it down for them. I think that and then the other way was where you almost avoid the issue altogether. It's sort of like, well, I'm dyspraxic. Okay, all right, thanks, bye. You're not giving them much to go on, and it's left open to interpretation. And then the third way, which is what I've been doing more recently, and what I was kind of advised to do through coaching in the past, was to basically say that this is me, this is who I am. It doesn't affect my intelligence, just means that I'm wired slightly differently, and these are some of the challenges that I face. But then I work really hard to kind of cope with them, and I've developed coping strategies to reduce their impacts. And but these are the strengths that I can bring, and this is how I can really make an impact and add value to your team. And so by doing that in a really kind of open, positive, honest way, immediately you've been very specific about what you need and the challenges, but also you've outlined what you can bring.
So one of the really interesting things is that you are a neurodiversity advocate, and you are going out and you're talking about your story and really, making everyone aware about what neurodiversity is and your experience so far. And I think what I'm really interested to find out is about, what would you say to a manager or a director of an organization who is unsure whether to invest in neurodiversity and whether it should be on the D&I agenda? What would you say to that person?
I think it's two things there. I think first of all, often the changes that need to be made, or sometimes need to be made, are very small and don't really cost much, if any, money. So whether that's giving someone a quieter space to work in, or adapting the way that you communicate with a person, they often don't cost much, but the impact can be huge on that individual and on the quality of the work that is produced, and on the quality of the team. The success of the team can be vast just by making those very small changes. And I think that's the first thing to keep in mind. It's not a costly exercise, but I also think that the focus should always be on the individual. So don't go by the label. Forget the fact that that person has that particular diagnosis or whatever. You focus in on that individual. What works for them? How can you get the best out of that person? And if that focus is on the individual, then you'll be able to get the most out of them, and really be able to draw on what they can bring to your team, and not to think about, maybe somebody else who's dyslexic or dyspraxic or whatever, and going by your experiences of that person. Everybody's experience of it is individual, is personal to them. No two people are the same, and so making sure that you are doing it in a way that is tailored to that individual can be hugely beneficial.
I think that's quite a nice place to finish on, where, in relation to what value does neurodiversity add to the workplace, what value do you add to the workplace? You just mentioned it.
So I'd say around creativity and innovation, that sort of thing, is something that all companies, all businesses need. That ability to think a bit differently, think outside the box, and I feel like that is a real strength. I think that also written and verbal communication skills are a real strength of mine. So I previously worked as a copywriter, and that's kind of a good space to be in if your writing skills are quite good, and also just sort of relationship building and that sort of thing. There are roles that I've been in education, but also in my new role, where it's very much about speaking to people, building relationships with people in different industries, and listening. And I think that's the other thing, is about having kind of high levels of empathy. And I think that's a real skill, a real strength that people with dyspraxia seem to have. That's pretty common whenever I've spoken to others. And those are skills, those are strengths that can really help an organisation.
And is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners? What would be the last thing you'd like to say to the listeners today? As I
said before, I speak about this topic for different organisations, and it's something that I'm really, really keen to kind of expand on. And if there's something that I can do to help, then I'm always happy to do so. I think that in general, there is a lack of awareness when it comes to dyspraxia in particular. And I don't know whether that's because there aren't enough people who are self-advocating in that space. So it's something that I'm really keen to change, and it's something that I think that organisations can really benefit from. So I'm going to keep talking about it, and I think that others should do too.
That's awesome. Well, I will share your information and links so anyone can get in contact with you. But that's fine. Thank you so much for today. It's been awesome meeting you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you. And
thank you very much.
Have a great Friday evening.
You too. Thank you very much.